Clint Eastwood is 94 years old and a big deal. But he has now made one thing very clear. The man didn't want some people. Not even at his funeral, or anywhere near his memory first. Let's look at Tom Hanks from 2016. Hanks was in the movie Sully Miracle on the Hudson, is a movie based on a true story that brought in more than $240 for Eastwood million around the world on a $60 million of its budget. It got praise from reviewers, and both new and old fans, and Hanks always gave what was going on behind the scenes wasn't so since then. Smooth Loops has opened up about what it was like to work with Eastwood, more scary than any trick, or this is a very moving scene for anyone who's took part in plane crashes, wars, and island deserts. That says a lot. Clint Eastwood ran that set like it didn't believe in second chances, yelling, "No chaos, no holding hands." It was Clint who told them to say, "No." Just a soft, "Go ahead," and no cut, he called it. "Enough of that." Eastwood said, "That was scary as hell. Players like horses," which was a habit that came from Eastwood's time in the 1960s. Back then, Western TV show rawhide people in charge would scream, "Action!" so loudly that the horses would run away. So Eastwood vowed to never do that again. Never changed on the outside, but it might sound like quiet efficiency, but Hank said it was more like quiet. You never knew when the camera would go off. When it began to roll, you weren't sure if what you did was good enough. Went on until Eastwood said in a soft voice, "That's enough." And when you have Eastwood's cold eyes are watching everything you do. Move that even an Oscar winner 2 times over starts. He stated that he avoided eye touch at all, because they're afraid that one wrong he might get that famous Eastwood look if he looks squint, something that didn't need words to make you doubt yourself. But this is where things get really weird for Tom Hanks. They could have smiled on the red carpet and said nice things about Clint on press tours, but when he was on talk shows, especially the Jimmy Kimmel Live and the Graham Norton show, he said Eastwood, the truth got out. Liked them like Broncos and a cowboy trying to keep a crowd under control. And when he made jokes about it in front of millions of people, didn't hit as funny as it sounded. The sound was like a warning, keeping their anger inside. And finally Clint Eastwood was freed and saw that he's not the type of man to say something in public, but his friends and family say he wasn't happy. Given how Hanks drew him, Eastwood keeps his feelings very secret and is very proud of the way he directs. Works for him keep discipline and stoicism under control. It's not Hollywood theater. So when a well-known star like Hanks started letting out those quiet complaints, it rubbed Clint the wrong way, and for those who were there, it left a mark. Eastwood does not just wave away bad things. Blood? He's been in fights with other people before, settled down others, and buried them. But when someone crosses a line, that isn't said. When Clint thinks of respect, he remembers, and Hanks didn't cross that line by not directly attacking him, but making fun of him, his ways, by changing his name to that's the kind of late-night chatter Eastwood still remembers at age 84, not at 90, not even at 94. So when he talks about the people he doesn't want, it's one of those times at his funeral that Tom Hanks, those names keep coming up. And if there's another name on that wasn't said, Leonardo DiCaprio is on the list. When Edgar came out in 2011, it looked like a real Oscar candidate, and directed. DiCaprio stars in this Clint Eastwood movie written by Dustin Hoffman, winner of an Oscar. Lance Black. It looked like it should have been very big, but what people didn't see was the quiet stress rising behind the camera, the kind that doesn't make the tabloids cover it, but it still leaves a scar. This was the only time Eastwood and the two of them worked together, and Based on what took place on that set, it's safe to say that it will stay that way. Here's what happened. The money J. Edgar had to spend was very small. Only $35 million for a movie that covers 50 years and changes one guy after decades of getting older. That's Warner Brothers wasn't very tight, want to take a big chance, even with Eastwood and being in the director's chair. So DiCaprio did the shocking thing, is that he cut his regular $20 pay cut from $1 million to $2 million. Just the fact that they lost 90% of their pay shows how he really cared about the project. He thought the story was true. Trustworthiness, but it turns out doesn't mean they brought comfort, his well-known way of guiding to the set, quick, quiet, and no way to go back. If many takes a long time for you, practicing and acting as a director, the sets that Clint makes feel like you don't get warm-ups on the work floor. He doesn't say nice things, he just says, "Go!" Little more than a whisper, watches quietly, and then says, "That's enough of that one." That works for some people. Shot. No do-overs except for DiCaprio, who throws himself into every part of what it was like made up whiplash. And it didn't help that Judi Dench, who was also in the movie, proved that Eastwood's method worked. Even experienced players were confused by her, said that there were times when Clint, she didn't even call a take. One time was having a conversation with DiCaprio while the real scene to begin, but first be told it was already done by then, and when asked to go again, Clint ended the day. People who have that kind of power might keep money tight, but it also shuts down work together, and for someone like DiCaprio, who gets along with directors such as Scorsese, Nolan, and when it comes to Tarantino, that's a deal breaker. There was the damage to his body that DiCaprio sat for hours every day to get bigger. J. Edgar Hoover head cap with fake teeth, nose implants, aged makeup, and he walked. He breathed and talked like Hoover. He would sometimes sleep for 12 hours straight. Threw himself into the job, but he wasn't ready to be pushed, though. Clint wasn't in charge and didn't want layers. It was important to him to get in and out quickly. Leo felt like he was in a movie because of that. He couldn't control what happened in a movie. It's even stranger behind the scenes. Clint personally did the fight routines for DiCaprio and Armie Hammer, not just controlling it and playing it out, rolling around on the ground with his friend Buddy Van Horn. His stunt partner died at age 81. 12 years old, he showed Leo how to do it. There was no talk, just a performance, and after a quiet nod, Hammer said it was nice, but Leo didn't say anything. What does that quiet say after the shoot was over? There was no second job, no call back, no get-together, and for a guy like DiCaprio, who likes to form strong working relationships with, that says a lot about the leaders he's made. Scorsese worked on 5 movies, and 2 with Clint, only did 1 though, and it was J. Edgar. Even on press trips, Leo didn't try to hide it. But he also didn't honor the experience of being alone with Clint while working with him. It is said that he felt constricted by the films. That vibe was backed up by film box office numbers. 84 million around the world, which is good, but not great, especially not for a movie with 2 big names in Eastwood, and DiCaprio was in charge. And since then, Leo's timetable is full with everyone except Clint, and now that Eastwood comes in, he's drawing the last page of his life. Scripts with lines. He doesn't want to be dramatic. Respect for his memory. He wants it to be quiet. Wants people who didn't just cash it. He wants you to check or smile for the cameras. People who saw him knew who he was, and I liked the way he worked, even when it wasn't simple. So don't. DiCaprio will likely give you a flower wreath. Clint doesn't want it from someone who gave him one movie and left. And if you believe that's where the list stops, and wait for what you hear about Spike Lee, this fight became public. It can make the news, and eventually got so angry that Steven Spielberg had to step in. To step in himself back in 2006, Clint Flags of Our Fathers was directed by Eastwood. And Letters from Yuma, two plays about war using different voices to tell the same story. Besides, the first movie came after the time during World War II, when 6 guys, there were 5 Marines, and 1 Navy clerk raised the American flag at Yuma. The second film turned the lens around to show the Japanese. Letters of You got 4 nominations for Oscars, including Best Most Reviews, and the director called it the Spike Lee wasn't the better of the two. Wowed by either while he was advertising his 2008 movie Miracle at St. and it Kenny called Clint out for taking out the black men from the story. Lee said that almost 1 million people, men and women of African American descent, served in Wu and that there Yuma, but Clint's movies didn't show them. Letter only once, and not at all in Flags of Our Fathers. With just a quick one black man in the background being taken away, that's when the fight began. Blew up. Eastwood fired back saying as the movie was about the men who raised the flag in the well-known picture by Joe Rosenthal, and those 6 men were white. He said that the story he wanted to tell was it would have been adding black letters to it wasn't true to history. But he went on to say that Lee should shut his face. And that's where things really got interesting. Lee turned around and didn't back down. Took a bow and reminded everyone that he wasn't making up history. Black men fought, bled, and died in that war. That fact has been ignored by Hollywood for Flags of Our Fathers was published decades after Lee, just another movie that cleaned up real life with a narrow white C in the middle. He said that he didn't believe Clint he knew he was racist, but he was sure of it. Clint was out of touch and didn't see the issue he brought up in Bird's 1988 movie about the life of jazz great Charlie Parker as proof that he knew what black stories were about. The movie had Forrest Whitaker in it, and there was almost all black people cast. Clint that was, however, for Spike, this wasn't just about one movie. About decades of eraser, the war of words dragged on. It made news in The Guardian, ABC News, and as both directors stuck to their guns. As things got worse, Lee called Clint an old Clint, who was angry, told Lee off as someone who doesn't understand how history works. It was a fight between two groups, 2 ways of telling stories, and 2 very different ways of seeing the world. After that came Steven Spielberg. Had they made Flags of Our Fathers and Letter from Yuma, with whom he was friends with Spike Lee when the fight got bad. Boiling point. Spielberg took a quiet step behind the scenes. No press, there won't be any public apologies or gatherings, private calls and chats behind closed doors, and good manners, and it worked. Lee did send Clint one in the end. For a private party, one of his later movies, checking not because they put in a patch things up, but Spielberg set them up. Peace, but they never did became friends, but they never worked together. They never talked about each other in public. And people say that for people close to Eastwood, that fight left a market not because of the idea, but Clint's a man because of the disrespect who builds walls around your duty to you. You don't agree with him, but if you call him in public, he doesn't. Don't forget that's why Spike Lee's name is high on Clint's list of people. Politics had nothing to do with his funeral, but because of what Clint thinks is public being rude to him after you drag him into it. There is no need to fight in front of cameras. Going back, and if that line is sharp, Spike's face is carved in stone. When it Michael Moore, Clint and is more than just creative, it's personal, it's angry. There are differences, and the first fight never stopped. Took place at the National in 2005 dinner for the Board of Review Awards in front of a group of famous people from Hollywood. Clint said something about Moore that still rings true 20 years later. Moore says Clint told everyone in the room that if Moore ever brought a camera to his house, that's not a figure of speech. He'd shoot him as a joke, but also meant to mean something. According to Moore, Clint didn't smile or laugh. He said it then and didn't back down. Said he meant it at the time. Moore, I finished bowling for Collini about gun crime in a documentary, and famously showed him sneaking up on him at the time. Charlton H. was head of the NRA on cam at his own house. He was fighting Alzheimer's. Clinic thought it was a low. The blow at that moment set it off. Clint's flame was lit, but it never really went off. In 2015, years after the fact, Eastwood talked about that night again during a live show at Las Vegas' CineCon. He tried to make the story less scary. He said did not really put Moore's life in danger. He did say that the idea wasn't that line came in with was such a bad one, laughs of nerves. But no one forgot it, because when Clint Eastwood talks about when he stands his ground, he means it. People who cross a line get a new one drawn. One made of concrete. Moore replied with a he laughed at a long Facebook post. He didn't want to move at the time. More trouble. But he also said that Clint didn't like how the crowd laughed, that Clint said it again and meant it this time. Moore says that Eastwood made it. It was clear that it wasn't a joke. In a personal way, the fight got worse again in 2014. When Clint put out American Sniper, the movie became the biggest hit. The biggest local release of the year, made over $547 million around the world. It was rough. Navy SEAL themed and patriotic shooter Chris Kyle. But Moore said that he said the movie was dangerous and rewrote history. Shows that he called shooters weak. One word set off a backlash. Fans and veterans of the celebrities lined up to stand up for Eastwood. Kyle and Clint didn't say much, but people who know him well said he was very angry at that point. Moore and Eastwood were on different sides of everything. Not just movies, but also ideas, culture, and country. Moore made his a brand by questioning the processes Clint built. He stood firm in them. And when Moore shot at American Sniper, Clint, he saw it as more than just a criticism, as an attack, which is why they never got into a fight. There was no peace talk. Clint has always said that he thinks pride in their freedom and property rights, and if Moore shows up not asked, especially with a film crew, Clint thinks that he has the right to keep his space safe. In that way, Moore's ideas don't go together. Protests. And that's what it's all about. Moore kept the fight going over time with several veiled jabs he made about 2005.